There's 2 days till takeoff. The good news? All this goes bye-bye from our TVs tonight.
It's not my job.
There's a hole in your budget, dear Labor, dear Labor.
The bad news? There's no pulling the plug on these guys.
Mr. Albanese, you speak extensively about being the young man from the council flat, and this is not an invitation to repeat that story. But
I might anyway.
Oh, please don't. Please don't.
The coalition today running to the finish line, narrowing the gap in 2 separate polls.
Run, Forrest, run.
Do you reckon the Prime Minister's attempt to recast his image is starting to pay dividends?
All along, we've thought this will be a very close, very tight election.
Dividends or not, today Morrison tried to rebrand his own rebrand. Bulldozer leadership, not bad, just misunderstood.
I think you've misunderstood what I'm trying to say. I've been very conscious about my approach for a very long time. And I got to tell you, in the roles that I've had, it served the country extremely well.
Morrison becoming the first Prime Minister in 50 years to skip the pre-election press club address as Anthony Albanese came out swinging.
The Prime Minister's most remarkable statement was that his biggest flaw is that he's too quick to solve problems. I'll just leave that hanging there for a bit.
Albanese's going the government after today's news that wages have risen just 2.4% in the last year, trailing inflation at 5.1%.
What a hit. This delivers the biggest cuts to real wages in more than 20 years.
We're seeing those wages start to rise again, but the challenge is inflation.
The choice Australians have to make this Saturday is which party can be trusted to solve these problems.
That choice finally upon us in 3 more sleeps.
3 long sleeps, depending on how you look at it. The Guardian's Amy Remeikis joins us now for the home stretch. And Amy, we've spoken so much about the economy during this election campaign. So how big of a blow are today's wage figures for the government?
I don't think it's as big of a blow as when the interest rates went up, and I think that's because not a huge amount of people pay attention to ABS data. And also, we all know that wages haven't been going up, not just because it's been a Labor line, but because we've seen it in our own page packets. So it's not new. I think it just took both the government and Labor by surprise by just how big that gap is now getting.
Polls were interesting. I don't often say that sentence, but they were, because it's not just one, 2 of them showing a tightening. Should Labor and are Labor worried about that?
I think Labor are worried about that, but I don't think that's new either. I think Labor's been worried about that the entire election campaign because the polls, while they have shown that Labor is in front, and while they have changed the polling methodology to make them a little bit more accurate, or at least they hope a little bit more accurate, there's always been that issue of the soft vote. And by that, I mean people might say that they're voting one way or the other way when it comes to a poll, but when it actually comes to the voting booth, they could change their mind. And that big cohort of soft voters, along with the undecideds, are the reason we're starting to see that tightening of the polls.
Yeah, and you can also sort of say you're going to vote one way when you haven't really thought about it, and then the moment's arriving, you start to focus in a bit more and make a decision. But can you think of anything in particular outside of those vagaries that might be behind this tightening?
I think we're also seeing a lot more people switch on to the fact that an election campaign is happening. Like, it has been a very long 6 weeks, like a very long 6 weeks in a very long 3 years. And the bottles of tequila I have in my recycling bin stand for that. But I think that for most people who actually have lives and interests outside of politics, they've only really started paying attention to the campaign in the last couple of weeks. And we've seen that with the leaders. They've really started honing in on their messages. We've had a big campaign launch. We've had this is what we're doing, and it's just been relentless. And so I think now you've got more people going, OK, this is actually how I'm going to vote.
I think all our recycle bins are going clickety-clack at the moment, Amy. It's not just you, but everyone seems to be obsessed with Morrison's bulldozer comment. I'm confused. Is it a flaw or a superpower?
I think it depends on the day that you ask him, because it's been a flaw and now it's a superpower. And then I guess it depends on what the focus groups say next about whether or not it becomes a flaw or superpower in the next stage or not.
Well, we've got 2 days to go and more than 6 million Aussies have voted early. How much can either party really shift the dial at this point, do you think?
Well, again, it comes down to just so many individual electorates. So it's going to really depend on whether those voters have already made up their minds. So Labor's got to hold everything and win at least 7 seats. The government has to hold everything and win at least 3. And so we've got, a few electorates where even just if a couple of hundred people change their mind, you could change the seat and potentially change the government. So yes, we've got a huge amount of people pre-polling and putting in for their postal votes, but really it's going to come down to a handful of electorates, and we just can't tell what's going to happen there.
Amy, we're nearly there. Thank you for your efforts and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.